Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Maria Martin, sports anchor at 11 Alive, joined by my friend from Locked On Hawks. We have Brad Rowland in the house. Brad, good to see you on a day where there was kind of a frenzy of moves by the Hawks, really within an hour of the trade deadline at 3 p.m. They were sellers, certainly, when it comes to the NBA trade deadline on Thursday. What was your initial thought when you saw all of this stuff come down, starting with, of course, DeAndre Hunter?
Yeah, there was kind of a build-up because there's some rumblings out there anytime the deadline's approaching, and it wasn't as shocking now as it might have been a couple days ago, if that
Sure.
makes sense. Like
Yeah.
especially the DeAndre Hunter thing kind of leaked out a little bit with Cleveland. There was rumblings of behind the scenes of that. But yeah, like you said, it's not necessarily a full-blown selling effort, but they certainly didn't buy. For instance, like you have two guys who have been part of at least their like peripheral core the last several seasons, and they're not there anymore. And no big names coming in. So on the surface, it's kind of like future facing to some degree, and it's explainable, but also not one that I think has been very popular so far locally.
DeAndre Hunter did a really good job of maybe upping his market value, I think, this year. Talk about the way that he has kind of transformed this season to make him so marketable.
For sure, yeah. Hunter's transformation has been big. Look, the Hawks might have traded him a couple years ago if he had been playing this way, or maybe not necessarily. Like I think he's kind of played himself into being traded as a positive that people want, teams wanted, and at this deadline. And it's a lot of it's the shooting. He's averaging a career high 19 points per game this year, making a lot of threes, taking a lot of threes, and he's really changed his play style. Like he's just been much more decisive. DeAndre's always been kind of a not like laid back necessarily, but kind of a slow paced guy. Like he's kind of methodical sometimes, and they've tried to speed him up over the years, and he's done that really well, making quick decisions, taking the right shots, being really aggressive, which they like about him. And I think that combined with, look, everybody in the NBA wants these 6'8" forwards who can shoot and defend, and he's one of those guys. So if there wasn't the injury history and all that, maybe he's still in Atlanta right now. But at the end of the day, he played really well this year, and he's been one of their best 3 or 4 players.
Yeah, and what a great move for the Cavs. Now they get a wing, and they're obviously competitive right now, and they hope to be competitive the rest of the season. But as for the Hawks in this DeAndre Hunter trade and what they get in return from Cleveland, what do you think could be positive about this move?
I think the most positive thing is that they got a couple guys back who are contributors. Like they're not big names, but Karis LeVert and George Niang are real rotation players. They were playing real minutes on the number 1 seed. You just alluded to it. The Cavs are really good this year. They were playing real minutes for those guys and helping them win. So they're not zeros. They're not big names again, but they can help the Hawks right away. They get some future draft assets, which I know are not the most popular thing in the world, but they do kind of help you down the line. And for a team like the Hawks that has some young guys who are still in this kind of not necessarily full-blown rebuild, but they're kind of retooling at the moment, they clear the books a little bit. Hunter had a lot of money in the future that was owed to him. He might have lived up to that, so like it might look silly. That's definitely a possibility that if Hunter just plays great, they're not going to love this. But it's kind of risk mitigation and more flexibility for the future. And that's kind of a buzzword that not everybody likes, but it is true. They are more flexible now than they would have been before. Throwing the draft stuff, and it's you can kind of explain it.
Let's move on to Bogdan Bogdanovich, who's been with the team now for 5 seasons. It feels like he's kind of a staple here in Atlanta in a Hawks uniform, but no longer. He's going to head out west. He was linked to a lot of different teams throughout the trade deadline. The rumors were crazy when it came to Bogey, but now ultimately he is going to head to Los Angeles. What does this move do for the Hawks?
Yeah, with Bogey, it was like the writing was on the wall the last couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks, where it just felt like both sides maybe were ready to move on at some point. There wasn't like anything explosive about the reporting. No one was saying he definitely wanted out or the Hawks had to trade him, but he's been away from the team, and that's just kind of what those things are. He goes to a situation where the Clippers are winning this year. They've been competitive. They could use a shooter like Bogey. And he's had a rough season. I've long talked about how good Bogey has been in Atlanta, and he definitely has been. But it's been a rough one for him. I think he's acknowledged that already, and he certainly would if you asked him. But the Hawks kind of get this defensive-minded guy in Terrence Mann back in this trade that fits well with Trae Young. Like the Hawks have been doing this thing recently where they're trying to surround Trae Young with a bunch of long, rangy, athletic defenders. He's another one of those guys. They've done that job. They'll miss Bogey for sure, especially the best version of Bogey. But he's getting older, and those things. It's kind of they get a little bit younger, a little bit more athletic, and Bogey finds a new home that makes sense for him.
They get Bones Highland in that return as well. Let's talk about the guys that they do get in return from both the DeAndre Hunter trade and Bogdan Bogdanovich. Of the guys that are now coming to Atlanta to play for the Hawks, who is the one that you are circling and thinking, okay, this guy can make probably a pretty good impact right away?
Yeah, I think Mann is the one that they're the most invested in right away because he has a multi-year contract. Karis LeVert might be better than Terrence Mann right now today, but he's on an expiring deal. He'll be a free agent this summer. He's a little bit older than Terrence Mann. Mann is signed for 3 years. Like, you don't trade for Terrence Mann unless you actively want to keep him and have him be part of your team moving forward. So he's the one I would circle. Really active defender, a guy that's been really versatile. Like, he's not the biggest guy. I think he's like 6'5", 6'6", but he's played like power forward and even center at times for the Clippers. Like, he's very versatile, very good athlete. And also, for a long time, it was kind of a joke around the league that the Clippers were just like, they wouldn't trade him for anybody. They loved Terrence Mann. Obviously, that changed at some point, but I think that he definitely will help the Hawks right away. Come in, play hard, rebound, defend at a high level. And the Hawks this year sneakily have been pretty good defensively. Their offense has not been as good as it has been in years past, but defensively they've been playing very well, and Mann definitely adds to that.
And then let's not forget about Cody Zeller, even though he hasn't really been a part of the Hawks really at all this year. He was a part of the whole get rid of a lot of guys that play for the Hawks situation. What did you make of Cody Zeller heading out of town?
Yeah, it was kind of odd this year. He hasn't been around at all. Even like to media day, it was like, oh, he's not here. He was just not going to be around the team this year, I guess. It was procedural. I think until in the last few weeks, it was like, all right, they're either going to trade Cody or they're probably going to waive him at some point, create a roster spot. So no surprises there. They paid a very small price to dump him. It's a financial move. It's a roster move. And even as we're talking right now, they have some more work to do. They actually have too many players for their roster. So they got a little bit of stuff to do on the margins. But yeah, RIP to the Cody Zeller era.
It was short-lived for sure. Let's talk about one more thing. We talk about the Hawks being predominantly sellers. At this NBA trade deadline, there were a lot of rumors that Brandon Ingram could possibly be somebody that the Hawks would have been interested in. What would be a move that you would have liked to see them make if there is one?
Yeah, I think Ingram would have made sense. I think the Hawks were in it on him from what I understand behind the scenes. They were definitely calling on Brandon Ingram, and he kind of fits the bill of this like second or third scorer that they kind of need, especially right now without Jalen Johnson. Long term, Jalen would come back. You'll have that punch in the lineup. But at the moment, they just don't have a lot of offensive firepower. And Ingram definitely brings that, which is, I'm sure, part of the reason why they were trying to get him to come in. If they were going to add this year, that would have been the number one thing. Like, find somebody else that can, alongside Trey, create their own shot and score when they need it, both with Trey on and Trey off the floor. And right now, that's probably the biggest question, especially without DeAndre Hunter now. As he leaves, he's been their kind of second scorer since Jalen went down. They don't really have that guy at the moment. It's been Dyson Daniels a little bit. It'll be a committee, and that's probably the one thing that I think Hawks fans are kicking themselves about right now is just not having that second guy in lights as long as Jalen's out.
Last thing from you talk about by committee. This team's been hurt really a lot of the year, and they've had to do a lot of things by committee and kind of hodgepodging this lineup and making it look somewhat serviceable each and every night, and they do a good job of that. They've had some highs and lows. They finally got out of that 8-game losing streak when they beat the Pistons on Monday. But now, what are the Hawks doing? When you see this NBA trade deadline, if you're talking to the fans and you're trying to convince them of all these moves and what they made, what are the Hawks doing? What's their plan?
Yeah, I think in the short term, what they didn't do was tear it down to where they're not in a rebuild now. I mean, they already kind of were. This is always a weird season. The short version is they're not all in, they're not all out. Most teams in the NBA are one or the other, honestly. And the Hawks are in the middle right now, which is nuanced. But they got the number one pick last year with Reese Shea. They don't have their own pick this year. There was no reason to kind of go into the tank. So they're still trying to make the playoffs. I mean, they're not. They don't have DeAndre Hunter anymore, but they got a little bit deeper actually. They brought 3 or 4 guys in versus 2 guys. That kind of helps with, to your point, their injury stuff, their depth stuff's been a little bit questionable this year. They're deeper now than they were. I think they're well equipped now to at least make a playoff push. Are they going to win the championship this year? Let's be honest, Maria. They're probably not going to win the championship this year. But they're trying to make the playoffs. I think they still can do that after these moves.
Hopefully in the future they can do that. I'm with you, though. I don't think this is the year. Brad, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks for your time.